Spirit, amen.
The first reading from Genesis. God put Abraham to the test. He called to him, Abraham. Here I am, he replied. Then God said, take your son Isaac, your only one, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah. There you shall offer him up as a holocaust on a height that I will point out to you. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. Then he reached out and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the Lord's messenger called to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Here I am, he answered. Do not lay your hand on the boy, said the messenger. Do not do the least thing to him. I know now how devoted you are to God, since you did not withhold from me your own beloved son. As Abraham looked about, he spied a ram caught by its horns in the thicket. So he went and took the ram and offered it up as a holocaust in place of his son. Again, the Lord's messenger called to Abraham from heaven and said, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you acted as you did, and not withholding from me your beloved son, I will bless you abundantly and make your descendants as countless as the stars of the sky and the sands of the seashore. Your descendants shall take possession of the gates of their enemies, and in your descendants all the nations of the earth shall find blessing. All this because you obeyed my command. Word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God.
Our response is, I will walk before the Lord in the land of the living.
I will
I will
walk
Walk
before
before
the
the
Lord
Lord in the land of the living.
Land of the living.
I believed, even when I said, I am greatly afflicted. Precious in the eyes of the Lord is the death of his faithful ones.
I will
Walk
walk.
I will walk before the Lord in the
land of the living.
O Lord, I am your servant. I am your servant, the son of your handmaid. You have loosed my bonds. To you will I offer sacrifice of thanksgiving, and I will call upon the name of the Lord.
I
I
will
will walk
Walk
before the
before the
Lord
Lord in the
land
land of the living.
My vows to the Lord I will pay in the presence of all his people, in the courts of the house of the Lord, in your midst, O Jerusalem.
I will
I will
walk
walk
I will
before
walk
the Lord
before the Lord
in
in the land of the living.
land of the living.
Second reading is from the book of Romans. Brothers and sisters, if God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his only son, but handed him over for all of us. How will he not also give us everything else along with him? Who will give a charge against God? Who will bring a charge against God's chosen one? It is God who acquits us. Who will condemn? Christ Jesus is who died, or rather was raised, who also is at the right hand of God, who indeed intercedes for us. Word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God.
From the shining cloud, the Father's voice is heard. This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. A gospel according to Mark.
Glory to
Glory
you,
to you, O Lord.
Jesus took Peter, James, and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no fuller on earth could bleach him. Then Elijah appeared to them along with Moses, and they were conversing with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus in reply, Rabbi, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He hardly knew what to say. They were so terrified. Then a cloud came, casting a shadow over them. From the cloud came a voice. This is my beloved son. Listen to him. Suddenly looking around, they no longer saw anyone but Jesus alone with them. As they were coming down from the mountain, he charged them not to relate what they had seen to anyone, except when the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what rising from the dead meant. The gospel of the Lord.
Praise to
Praise to
you,
you,
Lord
Praise to you,
Jesus
Lord
Christ.
Jesus
Praise to you,
Christ.
Lord Jesus Christ.
That last line is interesting. They still question what the resurrection was going to be.
Yeah. Did we ever learn the name of that son that Abraham was ready to sacrifice? Was his
It
name
was
ever?
Isaac.
Was it Isaac?
It was Isaac. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
John,
left
you
out. I
weren't
think
paying attention in Bible study.
they
I
skipped
gotta
over
pay
his
more
part.
attention. Yeah.
Yeah, they skipped over his part in this reading. I think there's a gap there where Isaac comes in and asks about where are we going. We got the wood, we got the flame,
Oh, that's
but
right.
Yeah.
we don't have the lamb. Where's the lamb? You know, we usually sacrifice a lamb.
Thanks,
And
Bob.
I
That's
don't
right.
even, well, Father Wilt reminded me yesterday afternoon about that part, and he said the lamb. Well, the lamb comes later. Jesus becomes the lamb. Of course, Abraham finds the ram to sacrifice,
Yeah.
but then we move
Yeah.
on to the new sacrifice of the lamb, which is Jesus.
And that location was the same place that eventually became the Temple Mount in Jerusalem centuries
Yes.
later. Yeah, that's always fascinating to me. And that all tied together.
Right.
Yeah, this is before there was a Jerusalem, I guess.
Yeah, Land of Moriah. Where'd that name come
Moriah.
from? So
That's the mountain. I think that's the name of the mountain, or was the name of the mountain.
Let me ask you, if you got a message to sacrifice one of your children, could you do it? I don't think I could. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I thought of that one every time I hear that reading.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't do it. I don't. It's kind of like I don't care who's talking to me. No offense, God, but can't do it.
Yeah, well, I think
do it.
that points out what such a sacrifice it is.
Yeah.
You know, that we couldn't imagine making that sacrifice.
No.
You know, but God did, and Abraham was ready to. So that's
the
that's
test.
where that goes.
Test.
yeah.
Human sacrifices weren't that rare back then. I think they were more common than what we would like to believe.
Yeah.
So that I think that it wasn't a strange asking in that particular time period.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and listen to this podcast, but this is part of the Bible in the Year. Father Mike Schmitz did a really good reflection on this, and it was kind of eye-opening to me. But I think he knew that he wasn't going to have to sacrifice his son. He was following what Jesus had wanted, but obviously, too, this is like the whole foreshadowing of what was to come, and the sacrifice of Jesus as well. So it was kind of interesting how he tied it in. So I'd have to refresh my memory on exactly how he had said that, but it was, just trying to put into realization, how much do we trust Jesus and what he's asking us to do, and trust God with what he's asking us to do. And if God asks for something, then, if we're faithful, we're going to go ahead and give it to him. So
So you're saying that what he's saying is that maybe Abraham would have backed out at the last minute. You're thinking he was going along until the last minute, knowing that that God would not ask him to do that, but he wanted
Right,
to-
because
he was
yeah,
he would never ask him to do something like that, but he went along knowing that God wouldn't ask him to do it, so he would but that's another way to look at it. I guess we've always looked at it the other way, that Abraham was willing to do anything at all for
yeah, and there
God.
was also something I don't think it was in this passage, but there was something else that kind of like made us like you could miss it when you were reading it. So I'll go back and I'll look for that podcast and I'll actually share it in our email thread, because it's very interesting. And I love reading the Bible, but I also love hearing him say it in the podcast, because there's a lot of times there's things that I miss. And then when I hear his like little reflection and his description, I'm like, huh, that makes sense. Like, where the heck have I been the last 47 years of my life? Like, how did I totally miss this, you know? So, but it was just like, that was one of them. I was just like, so I actually sent it to my husband. I'm like, listen to this. Did you know this? So I'll go, because I'm not going to do a very good job of explaining it as well as he did. So I will get it and I will share it with you guys. So
Great.
The book
I
of-
think another piece to it too. Didn't they wait almost 100 years to have Isaac? They were older. They were up in age.
They were
they didn't-
definitely
they-
old, but
she couldn't have any children. She was
It was
It was
barren.
his own. It was his, yeah.
And perhaps the fact that it did happen gave him the faith that it could happen again, because it seemed next to impossible.
I don't
So-
know, maybe
so John,
John's
I-
age.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah. Well, he also had a child through a maidservant, his wife's maidservant. So I mean, I mean, he could have children, but
Sarah
no
couldn't.
problem. Yeah,
Right.
Sarah couldn't. Yeah.
But I think that's when you ask the question, could we sacrifice our children? I know some people struggle to have children, but to that degree, when you're praying and you're looking for that sign and it comes after all those years, there could be a deeper connection too with God that we might not have,
Good point.
If you think back to the second reading, the first part of the second reading, the thrust was trust in God. And it's like the God's beating us over the head with, trust in me, everywhere you turn. And do we really do it? Abraham obviously did, but John, I'm with you. That would be awfully tough to do that. How many other aspects of our life every day do we go about and maybe not truly trust in God? And I know I do, or don't, I mean, at times.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
got to think about it.
In the book of Hebrews, it says, referring to Abraham, it says, by faith, Abraham, when put to the test, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises was ready to offer his only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac, descendants shall bear your name. He reasoned that God was able to raise even from the dead, and he received Isaac back as a symbol.
Ah. Thanks, Roy.
Yeah.
That's great. Faith.
All right, guys, I got to go to church. I'm going to
Okay.
leave.
Don't we all?
We'll see you all
See you
later.
tomorrow.